What's up, everybody? Couch Mouse here, coming at you with a brand new Valorant video. And in this video, we're going to be breaking down 5 agents that you absolutely suck at. Or rather, there are a lot of different things that you're doing incorrectly on the agents, and you're really not getting the maximum amount of value you could be, and it could be the reason why you just can't climb. But go to the GameLeap website in the links down below for high quality in-depth advanced guides and VOD reviews over every single one of these agents. So if you really want to know step by step exactly what you need to do in your games to climb all the way to Immortal and beyond, go check it out down below right away. But without further ado, let's jump into the video. Now, kicking it off with the first agent that I want to talk about in this video, and it's none other than Phoenix. While Phoenix seems like a pretty simple character to play, there are many different ways that people are playing Phoenix incorrectly, and typically it all revolves around a misuse of his abilities. You see, Phoenix's passive, or his ability to use his own abilities, Molly and Flamewall, in order to actually heal himself, is something that a lot of people know and use often, but it's typically the improper way to use Phoenix because these abilities can create strategic advantage in gunplay and allow you to win the duel, and a little bit of health is never going to equate to that amount of value. A perfect example of this is, let's say that there's 2 possible covers that the enemy could be hiding behind. You have one Molly and you're at 50 health. Now, knowing where the enemy is and being able to challenge an angle that they're in with confidence is going to be far more valuable than that little bit of health that you could regenerate using your hot hands. So essentially, either throwing it in one corner and flushing the enemy out and forcing them to be moving and you get a really easy kill on them, or being able to challenge the alternate angle with confidence is going to give you that potential one fight way more than you actually having that little bit more health. Because imagine the opposite scenario where you have to essentially 50-50 both the angles. You 50-50 both of them, doesn't matter what your health total is. If you guess wrong, you're gonna die, and even if you guess right, you're still not going to be able to 100% control or dictate the engagement. So it's really just a misuse of that ability. In a very similar way, people often use Flamewall to heal, which is not always the worst thing that you could possibly do. However, typically using it as a way to block off certain angles and really take sight control without having to clear or challenge every single sightline or cubby can be amazing, not only for you, but for your team as well. If you ever go watch a really high-level Phoenix player, they'll often be at very low health total, and they still won't use Flamewall or their hot hands to actually heal, and they would rather set up optimal challenging scenarios for their team or just themselves. Now I'm going to the next agent that you are absolutely sucking with in your games, and you could be getting so much more value on this agent, but you're just not, and it's Sage. Now the biggest problem with Sage mains is that they're consistently blowing their load too fast. And I don't blame you, you're looking at Brimstone from behind all the damn time, but all joking aside, you're actually just using all your abilities for very little overall stall and value. You got to think about your 2 slows and your wall as sort of a mini delay, right? If enemies come in, you can prevent a rush or play for a certain amount of time, but if enemies just come to the choke point, start firing, use a little bit of abilities, and you invest a wall, and you invest double slows, did you really get that much value at all? No, not really. You really didn't get much value, and you might have stalled for maybe 25, 30 seconds total. I think what you really need to understand is you do not have to completely shut out a push. Like, that's what I think a lot of Sages are trying to do. They want to wall and then follow it up with a slow and then another slow because they don't want any enemy to slip through. You do not need to be going that far. What you need to be doing is setting up unoptimal engages by the team. So, for example, let's say you throw that Sage wall up and they pop a hole through it. That doesn't necessarily mean that you need to instantly slow, because if they still want to engage, they have to partially engage blind and they have to funnel in really tight where it's easy for you to make a counterplay on them. So essentially, yes, the enemy could still come into the point, but it's going to be a more unoptimal type of push, and a lot of times it's just going to dissuade them altogether until it completely fades away, or they're going to try to break the entire wall. Essentially, you want to be getting more value or more bang for your buck out of every ability, and you should not be trying to play to just completely lock it out, because I really think that that contributes to people just way overusing their abilities, and then they just don't have enough, or they're really easy for the enemy to bait out, and then they're just not going to have their abilities later on. Now moving on to the next agent that we got to talk about in this video, and it's one that a lot of people are feeding on like crazy, even though she's so damn powerful, and it's freaking Raze. Now, one of the biggest things that you need to learn how to do on Raze, especially with her paint shells and her abilities in general, is be responsive with her abilities. A lot of times people want to be very proactive with Raze's abilities, but especially on defense, there are many scenarios where you can respond to enemies engaging with your abilities. So a perfect example of this is, let's say the enemy is playing default, right? Your Sage is there with you, she slows, they still are there, they wait, your Sage walls, they break it, they're still waiting, you know they're there, and then they want to execute. You know they're gonna execute, they're about to execute. You can wait out of LOS of them and wait until they actually start to engage. They pop the smokes, they throw in a flash, and you respond to all this by doing a very simple bounce, raise, paint shells, and that's gonna completely disrupt their execution. And it's the same idea with the Sage, right? You're not necessarily trying to completely eradicate them, but what you are trying to do is create unoptimal engaged scenarios that give you opportunity to actually get kills with your gunplay as well, and really put extra pressure on them to where they can't take the slow approach, right? They're not coming onto point and just really meticulously checking every single angle. Now they have the option of, oh shit, I gotta back up, or oh shit, I have to engage right away, and it's gonna create unoptimal scenarios for them to come in, and it's also gonna create more mistakes that you can capitalize on with your gunplay alone. Now, another big thing that a lot of Razes try to focus on a lot, which is nade lineups, which I think are pretty good, but the most important thing in my opinion is actually Boombot lineups. You're seeing this a lot in pro play where they'll use one Boombot and it will clear many different angles, like up split mid, for instance. If you don't know exactly how to bounce your Boombot in a very particular way to clear the maximum amount of areas, you need to go to a custom games and you need to practice it, because it is so important how powerful this ability is. This one ability allows Raze to clear multiple angles, like 3+ angles, when with any other character, with any other ability, it would take like 3 abilities to clear, and you can get all that value from one ability. So it's really worth the time and effort to just make sure that you master how to get it exactly what you want it to, how to clear the maximum amount of space, and you're gonna get a lot more value on this prestigious agent. And we're going to the next agent that you probably suck at, and I'm sure your teammates have told you this already, but it's Jett, and I know a lot of you have had feeding Jetts on your team. Now, there are many reasons why Jett players are just, you know, feeding over and over again. Sometimes they're just way too cocky, sometimes they don't use their abilities in the appropriate ways, and sometimes they don't have the mechanical skill to back up what they're trying to pull off. Like they're trying to mimic some pro player like Tens when their mechanical skill is that of a gold, and you just can never pull off his play trying to replicate it 1-to-1. Now that being said, there are some key places where I think everyone can improve on Jett regardless of your mechanical skill, and the first one is your ultimate. A lot of times people get really salty where they're like, ah, what the hell? I'm freaking whiffing my knives, I can't kill anybody. I'm either not killing people with my right click when I'm right next to them, or I'm just somehow whiffing all of them from distance. So there are a few things that you can do. First off, when you're in your ultimate, something that you need to be abusing a lot is the fact that you can actually be perfectly accurate while you're in the air. And I'm not talking about updraft, because when you're flying really high and floating, you're actually a really easy target. I'm talking about jump peeking angles. You can jiggle jump peek angles with your knives out and barely shoulder peek it and potentially see enemies and actually get a couple of shots off while you're in the air perfectly accurate. Really good way that a lot of pros utilize Jett's ultimate. You're just jump peeking or jiggle peeking a lot of different angles, and it's really powerful to do. Another thing that you need to understand is that you can be running full speed and it's knife speed, so you're going pretty fast and still be using your knives. A lot of times people are inadvertently counter strafing for some reason when they're using Jett knives, and you need to be utilizing the fact that you're highly mobile and it's really hard for you to get killed while you're moving and shooting. So that's just something that gives you a little bit of extra survivability. Now, the one tactic that a lot of high-level Jett players, specifically Korean Jett players, I see them doing this all the time, is they'll legitimately be waiting around a corner or behind a corner tight, and they'll be crouching, looking slightly up about body level with their knives, and they're just waiting for an enemy to peek, and they're just gonna instantly kill them. They typically will instantly right-click. If someone else swings around, they'll be able to right-click again, or they'll be able to combine some type of dash play with it. But you can set up basically what I would call just traps, where you use it kind of like a shotgun, where enemies just peek you and then they just instantly die, and you can just hold an angle like that. Be very patient. A lot of times people want to pop their knives and just run around like a psychopath, but there's a lot of ways to actually just completely lock down an area and punish enemies for not clearing with utility, which they just can't do later in the round. So very powerful ways to use Jett ultimate to get guaranteed value rather than trying to dash, updraft, fly around like a psychopath. I also think that takes far more mechanical skill than using the Jett ultimate the correct way. Now, the last thing I wanted to talk about Jett is general dash use. Something that's really amazing to do on Jett is, let's say you're trying to go into U-Haul on freaking Bind, right? You can utilize your smokes in a way that will protect you from multiple different angles. Something that a lot of high-level Jetts will actually do is they'll actually smoke the corner of U-Haul and then they'll dash into it because it will protect them from behind and it will protect them from the front. And if enemies want to spray through either side, there is a chance you could get killed. However, it's going to give away their position. It's going to allow your team to refrag a lot easier because the enemies are going to be focusing you. And a lot of times, they're not going to get that great of an opportunity. It's also really good to time this execute with some sort of flash so that you are less likely to get shot from multiple angles rather than just psycho forcing the dash through. But ultimately, it's far better for you to be able to walk out of your smoke with your gun out already rather than just dashing in front of the enemy's face, because they're just going to be able to kill you and shut you down really easily. And maybe it's worked in the past for you, but that's just up against bad players that just haven't been able to punish you for dashing right in front of them and having that really long ability to gun cooldown. Now, that being said, let's talk about the last agent that people are misusing a lot, and it's freaking Killjoy. Now, with Killjoy, the biggest mistake is just people not using their abilities around every single engagement. You can clear people out with your Nano Swarm, you can clear or potentially block enemies from pushing a certain angle with your Alarm Bot, and you can peek any angle blind with your freaking turret. And in all those ways, you can set up an engagement with the enemy that's favorable for you without actually having to peek them blind at all, or without having to take a true 50-50 or even less than that. Now, I wanted to give you some special tips that I recently found out with Killjoy that's pretty cool. The first one I wanted to talk about is if the enemy Killjoy has an alarm bot, you can actually use your own alarm bot on top of it to prevent it from going off and detecting you. I saw this freaking from Shazam's stream, a clip from Shazam's stream. It was actually really nuts, and I think that that's definitely pretty nutty. And of course, we recently covered an instance where you can actually body block shock darts and other rollouts from touching your freaking lockdown, which is something that is absolutely amazing. You can physically jump and block a shock dart, and it can prevent it from killing your lockdown, which is important because it takes 2 shock darts to kill it. So if you can block that rollout with your freaking body, yeah, you're gonna take some damage, but that can completely change the entire engagement. So it's definitely a tip that you need to utilize and understand that you can do in a lot of different situations. But go to the GameLeap website in the links down below for high quality in-depth advanced guides, VOD reviews, tips, and tricks. We got so much damn content on the GameLeap website that you absolutely gotta go check it out right now down below. But thank you so much for coming by. I hope you enjoyed the video. I love your faces, and I'll see you tomorrow.